So I'm just going to review the cell membrane. Notice that quite a few of you guys are still having trouble understanding how things move across the cell membrane. Okay, so the cell membrane is composed of a lipid bilayer. So there's two layers made out of something called a phospholipid, which is a lipid with a phosphate group attached to it. And we've seen this a number of times. This one's the phospho, and this is the lipid. The lipid stays on the inside because it doesn't like water, and so it stays away from the water, so it orients itself that way. So let's pretend this is the outside of the cell and this is the inside of the cell. And the outside of the cell is where there are substances that the cell needs. So for example, let's say there is glucose on the outside of the cell. The cell can bring the glucose in through the process of diffusion. Okay, so diffusion is just simply going across the cell membrane, and it goes from a high concentration to a low concentration. Then there's another type of diffusion, but it's called facilitated diffusion. And in facilitated diffusion, you actually need a channel to facilitate the diffusion. Facilitate means to help, okay? So you have things that can't diffuse easily across a cell membrane, so they are easily diffused through this channel, and we call that facilitated diffusion. Okay? And facilitate means to help. So if you facilitate something, you're helping something. And usually people who facilitate things are people who are trying to accomplish something. So a teacher would facilitate a lesson so that you could learn what you need to learn. And then the last one, again, is through a channel. And this involves moving things that are in a low concentration outside of the cell and a high concentration inside of the cell. And the reason this would happen is because it's something that the cell really needs a lot of, so it has to keep bringing it in. And in this case, when something moves from a low concentration to a high concentration, we have to actively transport it because it can't diffuse. Because remember, diffusion is when something goes from a high concentration to a low concentration. And we are going from a low concentration to a high concentration through a channel. Okay? So we call this active transport. And we need energy in order to have active transport. So ATP, which is energy, needs to be used to get those things in to the channel and across the cell membrane into the cell.